Hello, so I'm going to give you some help with this essay question. Let's look at it. And the key thing here is that you understand that we've got two parts. First of all is the instruction to you, and actually, first of all is the assertion about history, and secondly is the instruction to you. The assertion about history is in red, the instruction to you is in black. What's the instruction to you? It is discuss this view. What does that mean? Well, it's one of those Cambridge questions without a question mark, isn't it? What it means is you have to consider this view, the bit in red, and you have to discuss it, which means consider it from all angles. Consider the strengths and the weaknesses. Consider how far you agree with this view. Consider how far you think this view is an accurate explanation of the thing that we're talking about. And what is the thing that we're talking about? Stalin's economic policies. Now, my friend from the grammar school in Pakistan knows all about Stalin's economic policies. She can even name them. She could even give you some dates for when they happened, and she could tell you the differences between them. My other friend from a school just down the road, who's not quite so hot on history, is a bit hazy on some of the details. He can't remember which ones Stalin's economic policies were. He gets a bit muddled up between the economic policies and the social policies, and he gets a bit muddled up between Lenin and Stalin. So you obviously want to be more like Pakistani grammar school girl. And so you're going to need to prep so that you know what you're talking about in this essay. So discuss this view of Stalin's economic policies. What's the view? Well, first of all, you've got to be able to identify that this is a causation essay, because we are being asked about the motives for Stalin's economic policies. Why did he choose those policies? Out of all the options available, why did he select those ones? And Cambridge are going to give you a couple of suggestions. They're going to suggest to you that actually his motivation was determined by ideology and by practical considerations. And they're going to say, was it A or was it B? Was it blue or was it pink? Was it ideology or was it practical considerations? And there you go. If you can get that far, then you've done a pretty good job of unpicking the question. And you can now start to think about your answer, because the question here actually gives you quite a lot of help in preparing, organizing your ideas and thinking about how you're going to put together your answer. Obviously, I hope it's obvious, you've got to talk about ideology and you've got to talk about practical considerations as reasons for Stalin's economic policies. And you've got to know what Stalin's economic policies were. So we're going to say, how far was ideology a motivation for collectivization? How far were practical considerations a motivation for collectivization? And then the same again for the 5-year plan. So there you go, those 4 boxes. And hopefully what you're thinking is 4 points, 4 paragraphs. That's the minimum for an essay. There's your essay plan ready to go right there. Of course, this being an A-level essay, you need 3 examples per paragraph. But they should be pretty straightforward and easy to find, and that actually looks like a reasonably solid plan for an essay. Now, you've actually already made a pretty good start at writing this essay, because if you're up to date with the mini essays that I've been setting you for the past few days, then you have the arguments ready to go. You might not have the examples, but you've got the workbook and you can find those examples pretty easily, especially if you look back to the double-page spreads that you've been doing with your notes on the reasons for collectivization and the 5-year plans. So if you can do that and put together those pieces, then you are in a pretty good position to be able to get started on writing up this essay. Now, if you're coming into the session tomorrow, then what I'd like you to do is to think about this and maybe come in with your 12 examples ready to go, and we can talk about them and we can bolt them together and build an essay together so that you can write it up tomorrow and have it handed in to me by the end of the day. If you are going for level 5, then you need to do a little bit more. And the little bit more, get it, is to focus on the essence of the interpretation. And the key thing here that Pakistani grammar school girl notices is that what the the hinge for this interpretation is that what Cambridge is saying is that ideology was more of a factor. It was more of a motivation. It was a bigger motivation than practical considerations. In other words, what they're saying is Stalin's economic policies were motivated by ideology more than by practical considerations. And so there is the argument that you have to address, and you have to either support that argument or challenge that argument and come up with an alternative. If you're going to do that, remember the 3 C's. Remember categories, remember chronology, and remember contingency. On this one, I don't think contingency is very helpful, so I'd be going for categories and possibly but chronology as well. So let me give you a little bit of a hint. What you might do is say that, let's just go back, what you might do is say that in the case of the 5-year plans, it was really practical considerations that was the bigger motivation. But when it came to collectivization, it was ideology that was the bigger motive. That would be an example of an argument that uses categorization. If you wanted to go with chronology, then what you might do is say earlier on in the piece, it's ideology, for example. You might say that the primary reasons for choosing collectivization and industrialization using the 5-year plans is because they're trying to build a worker state. But as time went by, practical considerations became more important. Or flip it around and do it the other way around. It's totally up to you. But there would be a couple of ways that you could approach this. Or you could just challenge it and you could say, no, it was practical considerations more than ideology. But that's really down to you to decide how you want to argue this. I would decide, honestly, I would plan it. I would find the examples. I might even write a first draft of the 4 main paragraphs, and I would see how the argument was forming in my mind, and then maybe put the argument together right at the last minute just before I submitted this essay. Come in tomorrow for the tutorial if you're coming, and I will help you to write it. If you're not coming in for the tutorial, then you're writing this at home. I'll create a due work on the GrammarNet page, and if you get stuck or you need a little bit of extra help, please let me know. Otherwise, good luck, and I'll see you next week. Hope that helps.